Hi guys, my name is Crystal Hardy. Sorry if I sound a little funky. I've got a little cold and I've got a cough drop in my mouth so that I don't cough all over y'all. But I'm going to go over my research project. This is on conversion and colonization, the impact of colonial Christianity on Native American religious traditions. My project is going to examine how Christian missionary efforts from the 1600s to the 1800s shaped and in some cases tried to erase Native spiritual traditions, as well as how Native peoples resisted, adapted, and preserved their beliefs. So just to introduce the topic a little bit to you, from the early 17th century, we have our Catholic, Anglican, and Protestant missionaries. They're coming over to North America, and they have two specific goals. One is to spread Christianity, and the second is to civilize those indigenous peoples. Sometimes those efforts are going to lead to open resistance. Other times our Native communities are going to blend those Christian ideas with their own cosmologies, and scholars call this hybrid religions. The central question of my research is, how did colonial Christianity affect Native American religious traditions, and how did Native people respond? My thesis is that while colonial missions disrupt Native spiritual life, many of these indigenous communities are going to strategically adapt Christian elements to protect and strengthen their cultural and spiritual identity. So just to give you a little bit of historical context, early Catholic missionaries like the Jesuits in New France they left a lot of detailed records of their work. This gives us an idea of what actually happened, but we have to remember that it is written from their point of view. We specifically see this in the Jesuit Relations, and it describes both the conversions and resistance, but again, it is written in that European point of view. So that's also often going to misrepresent some of our Native beliefs because it's not coming from that Native side. Alan Greer's Mohawk Saint looks at one convert, Catherine Tekakwitha, probably saying that last name wrong, and that shows how faith and identity could intersect in complex ways. In New England, you're going to have those Protestant missionaries like John Eliot. He translates the Bible into Native languages, as seen in his 1666 Indian grammar. This is meant to aid conversion, but it also gave Native communities tools to preserve their language. So some of the resistance in the adaptation wasn't just about survival, it's also about agency. Clara Sue Kidwell's Native American theology is going to show how Native Christians reinterpreted biblical stories through their own traditions. In the 19th century, resistance movements, like those described in Joel W. Martin's Sacred Revolt, are going to blend Christian revivalism with Native leadership to push back against colonial control. So we've seen adaptation, we've seen the resistance. These examples are going to remind us that conversion is never a one-way process. It's a negotiation, and this is often shaped by Native priorities at this point. So some of the long-term impacts that happen from this, the effects of colonial Christianity doesn't end in the 1800s. Tisa Wenger's Religious Freedom explains how laws often deny Native American religious rights well into the 20th century. So this didn't stop back in the 1800s. And this is going to lead to legal battles and the eventual American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978. George Tinker's Spirit and Resistance also frames this as a struggle for both spiritual and political liberation. And this is a continuation of centuries-old resistance to imposed religion. So, all in all, my research is going to show that colonial Christianity is both a tool of cultural disruption and a space where Native peoples asserted their resilience. The missionaries sought to replace their traditional beliefs, but a lot of these indigenous communities are going to turn their encounters into opportunities to preserve their identity, sometimes by blending traditions and sometimes by just resisting outright. So by studying these stories through both colonial records and indigenous perspectives, we're going to gain a deeper understanding of how religion shaped and was reshaped by the meeting of cultures in early America. Thank you for listening. I hope that this research is interesting. It highlights some of the historical realities of conversion and colonization, but it also honors the strength and creativity of Native spiritual traditions that have endured to this day. If you guys have any questions, let me know.